Thank you and welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is PACE financing and providing you a Northeast Ohio market update. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Nicole Sticka and I'm the Vice President of Energy Services with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. We want to make sure today's presentation is extremely valuable to you, so please submit all questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing your question. We do welcome questions throughout, so please do submit your questions during the presentation. Today's session is being recorded and will be distributed to all registrants. There's many benefits to PACE financing, which is property assessed clean energy financing. And one of the biggest benefits is the ability to preserve capital and credit line for core business investments and the ability to leverage a property assessment as part of your capital stack. And commercial PACE can provide 100% financing for eligible improvements. And since the financing doesn't reside on the business's balance sheet, it could be considered equity. You have a longer repayment term than loans available for the same purpose, and it provides a fixed interest rate for the life of the financing. The GCP team has been working with several area developers who are learning more about how to leverage PACE financing as part of their capital stack to make their projects pencil better and stronger. That being said, today I'm joined by a panel of great speakers and regional experts who will also highlight some specific projects and nuances of doing a PACE financing project. Our speakers today are Chris Jones and Chris Bondra of Bricker and Eckler, Jennifer Kuzma of the Advanced Energy District, Norma Fox Horwitz with NOPEC, and Dwayne Dickey with Air Force One. Allison, next slide, please. So you learned today that in order to prepare your project for doing a PACE financing, you will need to have an energy audit conducted of your facility if you've not had one done previously. And this is a simple way to identify the building energy systems in detail and to more specifically identify the potential energy and efficiency improvements. For PACE financing, you have to be able to qualify and quantify the kilowatt hour savings of any said improvement within a facility. But from that energy audit report, if your building has the incentives that what we call energy conservation measures, there's available incentives will align those accordingly. Right now, our main utility does not have rebates, but there is one small cash rebate that we assist businesses with called the PJM. Next, we'll then work with the business to connect you to contractors if you don't have any within your network already, from a wide range of purposes such as lighting, HVAC, solar, refrigeration, and a multitude of others. And today you're going to hear from one of our PACE lenders, NOPEC. But depending upon the size of the project, we typically will also work with private PACE lenders that we will usher the process for your specific project. Next slide, please. And one thing I'll say about the energy audits is that if you are a First Energy customer with a commercial space greater than 10,000 square feet, you're eligible for a free energy assessment. And I should have said that before, but it's an invaluable tool and resource, and one in which that we partner with NOPEC to provide our NOPEC businesses who are looking to do PACE financing to get that energy audit as their first step. So now I'm going to hand it over to my friends Chris Jones and Chris Bondra to get us started on keeping pace with the market in Northeast Ohio. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nicole, and we certainly are happy to be part of such a great panel. So with that, I would also just tell everyone that's attending that if you do have questions as we're going along, certainly throw them in the chat box because we do certainly want to make sure everyone's questions are answered. So getting into our presentation, we want to make sure everybody has the resources page from our website. That is the Bricker.com/pace. If we could go to the next slide. There we go. Great. Yeah. So this is an interactive map here on the on our PACE financing resources, and so we do update that monthly with regards to the jurisdictions throughout the state that are in an active energy special improvement district, as you'll kind of learn here later on. Bricker is also very involved with national and regional organizations that are promoting PACE. We've been consultants with the Department of Energy with regards to PACE financing. So fairly heavily involved and feel that we've done a pretty good job in kind of keeping our finger on the pulse with regards to all things, kind of PACE in around the country. Next slide. So wanted to give everybody just a sense of PACE, kind of where it started and kind of where we are today with regards to kind of how it's spread throughout the country. It does start with state enabling legislation before it gets to the local program level. But Ohio was one of the first few states that did pass that legislation back in 2010 period, and so we've done a pretty good job with regards to other states and actually advancing PACE. So kind of next slide, we'll show you kind of where we were last year, kind of a decade out, and there are now 38, as we sit here today, there's 38 states that have passed the state enabling legislation. I think we're still, though, at about 25 of those states that actually have an active program, and so there, does have to be, someone who's kind of administrating it, whether it be the actual, Energy SID itself or a program administrator. That's the way it kind of works throughout the country, and certainly in Ohio as well. But we still have some states that haven't passed the legislation. We hope that our neighboring West Virginia and Indiana, as a couple of examples there, can get on the board sooner rather than later. Next slide. So we wanted to give you a feel for things that are happening in Ohio. As we said, the local programs have actually been active since 2009. Again, we're referencing here the interactive map that you can go to at any time. Again, it's updated on a monthly basis. And so we've been pretty happy with regards to how PACE has been able to spread from a political jurisdiction standpoint. And there's a House bill that actually is becoming effective law here in April that's going to even help that a little bit more. And I'm going to let Chris Bondra explain what that is and the consequences to it.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I think it's important to understand here. You see all these little dots, and Chris Jones has referred to them as the energy SIDs or e-SIDs. And you see here, there's multiple dots here across the state of Ohio. And so I think an integral component of PACE financing is that the property where the PACE project is to take place must be within an e-SID, an energy special improvement district. So an e-SID is a public body created under Ohio law and controlled by a board of directors of a nonprofit corporation set up for that particular purpose. And special improvement districts have long been used by townships and municipal corporations to undertake, locally controlled public improvement projects. And here today, we have Jennifer Kuzma, and she is the head of the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District. And so many of the major metropolitan areas in Ohio, as you can see by this map, have high concentration of communities that are located within a certain area. And so if you look around Cleveland, all those kind of teal teal colored dots there, the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District, and that's in and around Cleveland. So the territory of an ESID is kind of limited to the specific parcels of land on which the PACE project is planned. But any parcels in that particular municipal corporation or township that creates or joins an ESID can easily be added to that ESID. And when we talk about adding communities or parcels to a particular ESID, that's where House Bill 444 kind of comes into play, which is effective April. It's effective now. So prior to House Bill 444, the only way to join an existing ESID was you had to have a particular jurisdiction that is contiguous to directly next to a jurisdiction that's already in an ESID or Energy Special Improvement District. What House Bill 444 does is it then kind of takes it a step further and says you do not have to be right next to or contiguous to another jurisdiction. You can actually be in a separate county, let's say, and join an existing ESID. So the counties have to be contiguous, and there's kind of nothing that prohibits someone else from kind of joining an existing ESID. So whereas before you had to be right next to contiguous actual city or township does, and now with House Bill 444 you do not have to be directly next to. You can kind of be in a neighboring county and still tack on to that ESID.
And Chris, I would just kind of add to that. We think we'll see how it practically plays out, but we think that practically what will begin to happen is that you'll have counties essentially kind of create an ESID with one jurisdiction to start off with, and so you'll have a county-wide ESID. But then, as Chris said, if there is actually a project in another county, in another jurisdiction that is touching that county, then it also can, be part of that ESID. So, there will be a regional aspect to the ESID like we've never, seen before. But, again, I think practically each locale is going to, kind of control it however they would, like to control it. I'll just kind of give you one example, though, of someone that we, have been talking with is down in the Athens area. So there's a township that looks like it's going to be the first ESID or jurisdiction that's going to create that ESID. But, we might, name that ESID something to the fact of, like Southeast Ohio, ESID or Athens regional ESID, to where then you could have, jurisdictions in adjoining counties come in, to that jurisdiction. So again, it could be, at that county. It could practically then, be kind of a multi-regional again, as long as those counties are kind of touching. So something I know that the market has really kind of been wanting for quite some time, and frankly, it would have been nice had we had this ability from the very beginning. It would have saved us all a lot of heartache in getting the territories advanced. But this is really great that it's on the board now. So all right, kind of going on with regards to updates, residential PACE. So the program, the statewide program, was really set to launch last March at the National PACE Trade Association Conference that's hosted by PACE Nation. And because of COVID, like a lot of other things, it put a wrinkle in it. And so what we are believing here as the program's kind of getting relaunched is that it will probably happen sometime over the next 2 to 4 months. And just to explain the way that does work is that each of the ESIDs, do have to approve of the residential plan, as it's called. But then once the ESID approves, then each jurisdiction within that ESID also has to approve and sign on to the program. And so again, it's only going to be those participating jurisdictions that will be part of the program. But in my humble opinion, I think it will take a 2, 3, 4 years for it to really kind of build out. We know that there's been some jurisdictions that have said they wanted to take a wait and see approach once the program kind of gets out there. I think we've heard from others that are really kind of excited and for the program to get started. So homeowners do have another option as far as making improvements to their home. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to just share some numbers with you. So as of the end of the first quarter, the total PACE investment in Ohio is over $423 million. That still puts us collectively as the state of Ohio number 2 behind California. And in 2020's number, as you can see, they're almost $128 million. Which actually I believe surpassed 2019 with COVID and everything. We felt that was a really strong number, but it's I can just tell you from talking with other the PACE lenders that are out there in the world, when they really kind of look to particular states to start marketing and investing their resources, Ohio is definitely in the top 5 of that list. And so, so I think we have all, again, collectively built a pretty good, industry with regards to, PACE, and it will only kind of, grow from there. Next slide. So total number of communities. So as far as all the total jurisdictions that are in an active ESID, as we sit here today, the number is up to 125. Next slide. This number with regards to the actual jurisdictions that either joined or created an ESID in 2020 was 33. I thought that was a pretty impressive number for, again, all things considered. I would imagine that number will kind of continue to be in that range, if not, increase, again, with the House Bill 444 that we mentioned. So these are the total overall funding numbers, again, as of the end of the first quarter. Looking back at where we were basically in June of last year, we were at 45 million total. So we come up from 45 million to the 61 million. We did add another county that had a closing, and that was Stark County, a project in Canton. So, so all things kind of continue to grow. And I think we've, had some, interest in some of the counties that, are kind of not on the board. But I think by the end of the year, I'm optimistic that we'll get, some additional counties that, are either not on the board with an ESID or maybe have just had a single project. And, but certainly Northeast Ohio is continuing to grow. Next slide.
Hey Chris, we have a question that just came in, and the question is: I see the Cuyahoga communities listed as dots in the Bricker website. Does that mean that those whole communities are eligible for PACE, or is it only specific to areas of those communities?
Yeah, so it would be only the communities that are actively joined at this point. However, if there is a community that is not part of the AED, then they certainly could opt into that PACE district, and Jennifer Kuzma would be the one to contact there. All right, Chris Bonda, I'll let you take it.
Keep going.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Chris. So, really what we're looking at here, the legal components of a PACE transaction. The legal considerations are all in this acronym, which was touched on very early. So, P, property, meaning that the financing mechanism improves real property and is secured with an interest in real property. Assessed, meaning the financing mechanism is paid for with special assessments, and kind of, special assessments is kind of like a line item on your tax bill, right? So, everybody gets a tax bill, you see your property taxes, special assessments, it's a government authorized lien on the property. If there's, where PACE is different is PACE assessment is, voluntary, right? So, the property owners here request that the special assessment is put on their property, as opposed to just being imposed, by the local government or municipality. So, if there's a road or a street that needs to be assessed, the public has to go through a certain process, and you have a right to object, and ultimately, they can put that on. Whereas PACE here, it's completely voluntary. You are petitioning to have that assessment put on your property and on your tax bill. And then obviously C and E, the clean energy, meaning energy efficiency and alternative energy improvements that are eligible for financing. Next slide, please. So it's kind of some of the improvements that we've seen and that are eligible for PACE financing. Right here, energy efficiency improvements, HVAC, lighting, roofs, windows, insulation, elevators, and solar, thermal, wind, geothermal, biomass. So basically anything that kind of improves the energy performance of your property is certainly going to be eligible. And we've seen obviously some things not on this list, but these are the major items that the property owners use to use PACE for. Next slide, please. So here, kind of how PACE is used, existing buildings for retrofits and an upgrade. Say you have a building, commercial building, and the HVAC unit is really needs replaced, and it was built in in the early 1900s, and you need something to happen here. You just kind of retrofit that new improvement in the new HVAC unit here, and that would be something that's eligible. New construction and gut rehabs. This is also eligible. And in terms of new construction here, the baseline is what is the code, what does the current building code say? And if you can show improvements of what you're installing in your new construction building, some of those items will be eligible for PACE financing. And as well as gut rehabs when you're tearing it down to the bone and basically starting over. And a third thing here, retroactive PACE, which is refinancing eligible improvements, and retroactive. We see a lot of times some people don't know about PACE, and they say, hey, we just put in, this new HVAC unit. It costs us a lot of money here. Can we go back? And we didn't know about PACE. Can we go back and have that done? And certainly retroactive PACE is available in Ohio for you to use there. Next slide, please. I'm gonna turn it over to Chris here to talk about underwriting and the capital stack.
Yeah, so we just wanted to kind of touch base and make sure, those that, are attending, if you haven't been close to PACE, just how it really does work as far as how much, PACE funding could be available. And these are all kind of general guidelines as each PACE funder really has, sets their own kind of underwriting. But again, just the general kind of basics here. So what we're trying to show on the left is like an office building, an existing building where a property owner wants to use PACE to fund their project, whatever it might be. It's based on the appraised value of the property. So just for round numbers, let's just say that the property had $1 million appraised value. We have PACE funders that can go, up to 30%. Some, are in the 20 to 25% kind of range, but we do have some that will go up to 30% of the appraised value. So in that instance, it would be $300,000 is what the maximum PACE loan would be. There does have to be available equity, and that's kind of what we're showing on the 10%. And then if there is any existing debt, one of the key things to the PACE approvals is that any mortgage holder have to provide written consent. That is an absolute, must and requirement. And so generally, speaking, we, like to have the conversation with the mortgage lender very early on in the conversation. Once a property owner has been introduced to PACE and wants to, start applying, we do highly recommend that property owner, have a conversation. Each of the programs can provide materials along, lender consent as well as we can. But we highly encourage that conversation be, had early, in the application process. So on the right-hand side there is a new construction or gut rehab. The amount of the PACE funding does drop down to a 20%, maximum. Again, these are general guidelines. Each PACE funder is going to set their own requirements, but for the most part, new construction gut rehabs that we've seen, 20% is about where most of the PACE funders are. As Chris Bonner said, is that, the eligibility there does, the actual improvement does have to get above code for it to be eligible. Did want to also, we get this question a lot, but it's about prepayment. So, once a PACE assessment, is actually applied to the property, and let's just say it's a 20-year term, then, then that does stay with the property for the 20 years, even in a sale or transfer of the property. And, but there is a prepayment option there, just like a traditional loan would be. So, hopefully it kind of gives you a high-level overview of, again, how much PACE funding is available, the mortgage lender consent, which is very, essential to the approval processes. Next slide. All right. Chris Bonner, can you pick it back up from here?
Absolutely. So, these next two slides kind of tie together here, but PACE can be a tool that's added to other financing, project financing available, such as TIFs, bonds, opportunity zones, historic tax credits. And so it can be utilized on a single parcel. It may not need to be citywide or district-wide. And so, the eligible property types here in Ohio, commercial properties, industrial manufacturing, private colleges, universities, hospitals, municipal, county, or township properties. And the next slide, please, we're going to show you an example of the Dayton Arcade. So, this isn't a Northeast Ohio example, but, it's noteworthy for many different respects. First, it's the first in the country, the United States, to use PACE financing alongside some new market tax credits, historic tax credits, to fund these rehabilitation costs. So overall, this was a $95 million project, but with partnered PACE and some of these other tax credits, this project was able to be completed. Next slide, please. And here's another one. This Toledo self-storage. This one's noteworthy because it was the first project in Ohio to utilize both qualified opportunity zone funds and CPACE financing. The CPACE funding was $1.2 million, and this was basically a redevelopment of early 1900s commercial warehouse building. And they had all those improvements there listed. And so just kind of give you an idea of that PACE financing can be used with other aspects of financial incentives with the city or with the municipal corporation or jurisdiction. All right, next slide, please. And then I apologize, it appears I just lost video again. So you bear with me, I'll just continue to talk, and if it comes back on, then yeah, you'll be able to see me again. But so PACE refinancing. So how does refinancing work? So refinancing is a really excellent tool in the concept of PACE financing, because what it does is it creates liquidity for borrowers who may not otherwise have it. So, PACE borrowers can use their assets as collateral, and, that asset is the property itself. So whatever the real property elements are that are being liened under state law. So if you have all your money you kind of soaked up into your project and you have debt financing on the project, there is an opportunity to refinance some of that debt out with PACE financing and, kind of potentially enable the swap of economics in the building as a result of that refinancing. So, kind of the fundamental point in PACE refinancing is not, traditional commercial real estate financing or refinancing of a mortgage. What is kind of going on with PACE refinancing is the refinancing of an asset that is eligible for PACE financing itself. So you have to analyze kind of what that asset is that was installed or improved. You have to analyze how it was paid for, and then analyze whether you have an opportunity to refinance that particular item, that very thing. So, kind of one might imagine a brand new hotel building, right? And that hotel building has a high efficiency HVAC unit, but it was paid for when it was built a year ago with a construction loan and sponsor equity. That's it. Well, that hotel has PACE eligible assets in it. Those assets can be refinanced with PACE. So what you may do in that situation is kind of refinance a portion of the construction loan and convert it to PACE financing. So what that does is it will decrease the amount of construction loan dollars from that senior lender from the project and increase the amount of PACE dollars from zero to whatever you'll be able to refinance. So the equity will remain, but this opportunity to refinance enables a little bit of position for the sponsor who had their assets in that building already. So kind of bottom line here, existing PACE eligible assets can be refinanced. In order to be refinanced, they have to be initially financed with some sort of debt where they could have been originally funded with PACE financing, and now you kind of refinance that PACE portion out of that. So the more complement scenario we see is, that the original financing was debt financing, and then coming along 6 months or a year later, a strategy to more permanent financing of the building, PACE financing, is then used to refinance that debt. Next slide, please. So, just kind of explain this from a different perspective, maybe a legal perspective per se. We are trying to find the special assessment costs, the things that are eligible for PACE financing. So we analyze two things we analyze here. We analyze the hard costs and the soft costs. So, the hard costs would be perhaps the mechanicals themselves or the material that, roofing material or windows. And the soft cost is the financing costs of professionals, capitalized interest, et cetera. So for any of those items to be eligible in that first instance, they have to be directly related to the energy efficiency or the alternative energy measures. So when you come around to refinance these things, you have to find those particular assessment costs. The general rules here to follow is, debt financed hard and soft costs, you can refinance with PACE financing. But if you had cash funded, let's say cash funded, pay with cash, whatever that time is, cash funded those hard and soft costs, you cannot do that. And the reason is that, once somebody puts cash and allocates that to the asset, that particular item, the expenditure is over and the asset has been paid for. So if you paid for things with equity, you can't kind of revive that item later. So to revive that item later really does not work under most states' special assessment laws in that scenario. And the reason is that the special assessment laws require kind of an eligible asset that has a live expenditure associated with it. So if you satisfy the expenditure by paying cash, the expenditure is no longer live. But if you have not paid cash and instead debt finance that expenditure, you can revive it for PACE purposes when you do the refinance. I think the final point here is that sometimes there are different programs that enable inducement procedures to allow property owners who might be in the process of financing or refinancing a project, and the inducement really enables the property owner to just go ahead and do what they need to do. Maybe even apply equity to pay for the asset, but the inducement kind of acts as, this governmental act to preserve the qualification of the asset as a PACE eligible asset. So, there are different rules that apply to different programs, but this inducement might help it might be a way forward if you're looking at a particularly maybe brand new project and you just aren't sure how you are going to finance it. If you want to preserve that right to use PACE financing in the future, you may want to ask about an inducement for the project. So those are some of the high points of PACE refinancing. I know it's kind of a lot at you right there, but it's just kind of one tool that you can use. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're going to kind of go through some examples here. Middleburg Heights project, Residence Inn by Marriott. So this was a complete renovation of an existing hotel that was completed in 2019. And the initial disbursements during construction were funded by a combination of equity and senior mortgage debt. So the PACE financing was used then to pay down a portion of the outstanding senior mortgage principal. And so the existing mortgage debt was construction financing that the property owner would want to convert to a more permanent financing on better terms. So, as part of this project, there was both a hotel and a retail component, two different parcels, and both parcels here, as you can see, were assessed for a total of $4 million worth of PACE, and the total financing for this project was $20 million. And so, if you're driving through Middleburg Heights and see the Residence Inn, you'll be able to see all the neat stuff they did there. Next slide, please. All right, and here's some other kind of overall Northeast Ohio case studies. Next slide. Chris, do you want to talk about? I mean, I can certainly talk about this one.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good on I think both of these.
Yeah, that's fine. So, the Spire Institute out in Harpersfield, Ashtabula County, and this is one that's recently done last year. This project first involved the creation of a new ESID to be able to move this project forward out in Harpersfield Township. And this project kind of involves new construction, renovations, and improvements to the Spire Institute sports facility. And what it kind of did is included the following PACE improvements: the installation of single-story dormitory buildings that will incorporate high efficiency envelope, interior LED lighting, high efficiency HVAC. It built out existing square footage for classroom space, insulated doors, added LED lighting, duct insulation, and energy upgrades, various energy upgrades to the existing 3 main buildings, which include the installation of an energy management system, LED lighting, and some of the other items, LED lighting in parking lots and outdoor areas. Next slide, please. Sorry, just previous slides. Sorry, I forgot to mention just real quick that the total cost of this is financing was around 1.8 million, and it was for 18 years. And so, as we mentioned, some of these financing terms can vary, and they kind of tie back into the life of the eligible improvements here. It's having to be 18 years, so 36 installments. And Greenworks Lending was the lender on this project. Next slide, please. And then here we have a recent one, and I'm not going to touch on too many details here because I know this was a NOPEC finance project, and it's this Kanye Human Resources Center, which also involved the creation of a new ESID. And Norma will be able to, I think Norma is going to talk about this one in more depth. But Chris Jones, do you have any other thoughts?
No, that is good. I think from our perspective, we're ready to hand it over.
Thank you to Chris Jones and Chris Bondra for giving us that, kind of 101 on the legal and where the state of Ohio sits. My name is Jennifer Kuzma. I'm the executive director.
Oh,
of the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District, and our energy district came together in 2010. We are a program, if you will, of an effort called the First Suburbs Consortium. We're a group of the inner ring communities surrounding Cleveland that come together to do advocacy, program development, and this is one of those examples. Working together with the city of Cleveland, we really saw an opportunity to use PACE to help our commercial property owners make investment in their properties, improve their operations, and really increase their profits. We had a lot of asks from our commercial property owners about ways to either retrofit their buildings or add, new machinery or improve operations. And PACE financing was a great option for us because it really, as you've seen demonstrated by Chris Bondra and Chris Jones' presentation, it offers a big variety of uses, size, and the opportunity to really stack multiple programs on to one project. Next slide, please. So our current membership in the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District includes 23 communities. We started off with 15, 14 of the inner ring for suburbs, member cities, and the city of Cleveland. In the last couple of years, we've added on additional first suburb cities, and we started to reach into kind of that second ring of communities just below first suburbs, city of Solon, Independence, Middleburg Heights. Really happy to have those communities come on and bring with them some really great projects that you've already learned about from the Chris's. We are one of the only Port Authority administered multi-jurisdictional districts. So many of the other larger districts that you saw in that map from Bricker, those are often administered by a larger entity. And in those cases, it's often the local port authority. Here in Northeast Ohio, it's fallen under First Suburbs umbrella, but we anticipate that as House Bill 444 takes effect later this month, that landscape will change a little bit. Next slide. So here's a list of some of the things that we've done. As discussed, there's a lot of different ways to use PACE financing, and I've kind of laid it out here for you by project size. And a little bit here at the beginning was an opportunity to serve as collateral on the construction of the Westin Hotel downtown and also some Playhouse Square renovations. As you can imagine, lots of interesting financing was used in both of those projects, and the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District served as collateral on some of the loans that were given as those projects came together. Many of the smaller projects that are listed there were done in partnership with NOPEC financing that Norma will tell you more about. Those smaller projects were at about I would say a $100,000 to about $250,000 investment point. Not huge dollars in scope of the development world, but certainly very important to those projects, property owners. We work really hard in communities to try to keep the great businesses that we have, and to be able to offer a program that offers long-term payment options and fixed interest rates is a wonderful way to get our property owners to make investment. Some of our larger projects were highlighted in Bricker's presentation, but you're starting to really see some of those big numbers creep up here in Northeast Ohio as more and more people are learning about PACE financing. Just at the end of just at the end of last year, we closed the Cirrus project at the former Nassar office headquarters in Fairview Park. And I will say this was a prime example of why PACE financing really came together for us in Northeast Ohio as an economic development tool. There was a gap to fill, and like in many projects, you can pull out a number of things that can be financed using PACE financing. And this really helped to get this project pushed over the finish line. Next slide, please. Detailed here for you some of the steps that a project will go through as it considers PACE financing. The first step can be accomplished either with your community, with a group like GCP, with a project design engineer. Really get together what your project looks to do. Are you replacing windows and doors? Are you maybe adding new HVAC to a property, or looking at a roof reconstruction? Once you've got your project design in line and you've got an idea of what that project's going to cost you, you need to find some financing. And members of the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District can help connect you to programs like NOPEX PACE financing, or national lenders who really have been great partners to us here in Northeast Ohio. As your financing is finalized and your project design details come to head, you'll put in an application with the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District. We do serve as that ESID that needs to approve your project before it goes to the home municipality for their approval. At which point those communities will file and work with you to place that assessment on your project. When you look at project timeline, want to give folks a good understanding that PACE financing does take a little bit of time to put together. I tell most people to plan on 90 days, in some cases even a little bit more, depending on where you are in your project design and your acquisition of funding. Coming to the Advanced Energy District, we can usually get you approved, but then you will move into the municipal approval process. In some communities, city councils are very comfortable to approve projects on one read. Other communities will take the full 3 reads that are offered to them by the Ohio Revised Code. Some communities can get your project on an agenda within a matter of weeks. Other communities, it could take a couple of months to get your project onto an agenda. Don't let that concern you. What I tell folks is, let's try to work as many parallel tracks as we can. So while I'm starting to talk with a property owner about their project design and how their financing is coming together, I'm making sure that that host community knows about the project and is able to kind of tee it up and get it started as much as they can in their pipeline to get it on city council agenda. Next slide, please. Was there maybe one before that? Nope, I guess not. All right, so a couple of things about 2021 for us. Really excited to say we've already got $24 million in projects anticipated to close this year. It's April, so it's really good news for us in Northeast Ohio. PACE is really getting a lot of interest. I think developers are starting to talk about it, and more people know about it. We're also looking at how to bring residential PACE to Northeast Ohio. As Chris Jones mentioned, there's a statewide program about to launch in the next 60 days or so here, and I'm happy to say that members of the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District will have the option to consider participating in that program should they choose. We've also will look at continuing to expand our membership this year. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if your community is or is not in the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District. We'd be happy to talk you through the process of how a district can be created to get your project PACE financed, can connect you to the economic development directors in your community that will help shepherd it through their process internally, can help connect you to lenders who may be able to help you. I will admit, one of the smaller projects that's on our list came to us. It was about to close a loan at a 19% interest rate for a new roof. And I'm very happy to say that Norma and her team at NOPEC were able to help get them what was really much more appropriate interest on that project. So thank you for the opportunity to tell you more about Northeast Ohio's district. And I look forward to taking questions and hearing from you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Up next, we're going to hear from Norma with NOPEC. And Norma, while you're getting ready here, a question came in that I think is probably most appropriate to be answered by you, and that is there a practical minimum to financing through PACE? Because there was an example of $115,000, and given, you know, fees, financing costs, closing costs, etc., it may seem not to pencil out as much. So I believe you're probably going to speak to the minimum and maximums of financing through NOPEC, but just wanted to let you know that that question did come in.
Right. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for participating in today's webinar. I also want to thank the Greater Cleveland Partnership for inviting me to be on today's panel. And I can say personally that everyone involved in today's webinar, NOPEC has worked with, and they've all been wonderful partners in helping to get projects done throughout our footprint. So if we could actually go ahead to the next, go ahead 2 slides, please. I just want to give a really quick overview of what NOPEC is and how we came to establish our PACE program. So NOPEC was formed back in 2000 as the state was beginning electric and gas deregulation. So we started with 112 communities in 8 Northeast Ohio counties. So this allowed residents and small businesses to choose their suppliers. Fast forward to 2021, well, 21 years later, we are now over 240 communities, more than doubling our footprint, and we're now in 19 counties. We've even expanded down to Central, Southeast, and Southwest Ohio with our community base. And along the way, our board of directors, always looking for ways that we can add value to our member communities, decided to establish and offer this PACE financing program so that we could help our commercial customer base, help them to finance their improvements and reduce their energy costs. We do serve about 65,000 electric and gas commercial customers across our footprint. Our total enrollment in terms of utility customers between gas and electric is nearly 1 million customers across the state now. So next slide, please. And I just want to mention that, you know, of those 65,000, every single one of them would be eligible to use our PACE program. So just keep that in mind as we walk through these. So the next one then, going into a little bit of the specifics on, next slide please, on the NOPEC's PACE program. As Nicole pointed out, we do offer financing, and since we are really serving smaller businesses, we tailored our program to serve them. We know that there's a number of other PACE options out there, but what we tried to do and made the purpose of our program was to serve our customers as effectively as we could. So our PACE financing program provides $100,000 to $500,000 for eligible projects. Again, as mentioned earlier, this helps keep the cash and credit available for other business operations. And sometimes these projects might have trouble getting financing otherwise, going to their typical commercial lender. You may have noticed that $500,000 there has an asterisk. We can and we have gone above that amount for 3 of our projects, but I need board approval when I'm going to do that. If we stick to the $100,000 to $500,000 range, we can close loans based on our existing criteria. But we have made 3 project financings of $1 million, and I'll highlight a couple of those today. The second point there about the fixed interest rates, we start at 2.5% for a 5-year term. NOPEC has set its program up to have 5, 10, 15, and 20-year terms, basically, and we cap out at 4% for that 20-year term. Our loans to date, I believe, have all been either a 10-year 3% rate or a 15-year 3.5% interest rate. One of the Chris's mentioned earlier about the amount of financing that you can get through various providers. NOPEC does finance up to 50% of the building's market value, and that's determined by the county auditor's market valuation. One of the projects that I'm going to highlight here earlier, though, is the building owner got an as improved appraisal. So there are different ways to qualify your project for higher financing than just going by the county auditor valuation. Excuse me. One of the key advantages we believe of NOPEC's program is we control 100% of the program. It's our funding, it's our criteria. Outside of possibly getting a mortgage lender's approval, there are no third-party approvals or other requirements. And we don't charge an application fee. So we encourage you, if you have a project that you're thinking about, and my contact information will come up at the end, call me, submit an application if you have enough information to feel that you can do that. We don't want that to be a potential hurdle for our borrowers, so we set it up so there is no application fee. So now I'm going to move into a highlight of 6 of our projects that we financed. And could we go to the next slide, please? And these are different types of projects, hoping again to illustrate how this tool can be used across a number of different types of commercial entities. This is Manaline Corporation. Their project was just a simple lighting retrofit, but I think these pictures really show the dramatic difference that it made in this manufacturing facility. And then just to give you a little bit more information, next slide, about the building and the type of business that it is. So this is a precision molded and extruded industrial products manufacturing facility. They also have a small portion in office space and warehouse, 35,000 square feet. This was a building built in 1975. So it's, it's not really, in terms of a building life, all that old. But we provided $119,000 of financing, 3%, 10-year term. And again, you can see they're going to save almost $19,000 a year just by doing that lighting retrofit. Their assessment per year is just about $15,000. So that's money straight to their bottom line. And then once that assessment is paid off, it will, it will all be available to their bottom line. So it's really something that we feel, again, is an important tool to offer to our communities and our business customers. So let's go to the next slide, please. This project's been mentioned. This is the East Cleveland Public Library, and they also did lighting as part of their project. The original portion of this building is a Carnegie Library, and this is where these before and after pictures were taken. Again, lighting makes such a drastic difference. And then we can go to the next slide. But the lighting was only one piece of that. As Jennifer mentioned, they did a number of improvements. They did also HVAC and windows. They borrowed a total of $250,000 from us. They took a 10-year term at 3% interest rate. We were actually willing to offer a 15-year term on that project, but they said, nope, we want a 10-year term, so we set it up that way. The original part of that building was built in 1916, but there was an addition added later. But again, important to a library, a government-owned entity, the average annual savings for those improvements that they made, over $27,000 a year. So that's important money or important savings that they can then put back into library operations and serving their community. This was actually our second government property that we made a PACE financing to. So I think people tend to overlook those types of projects or consider them eligible because governments aren't taxed, but they can choose to assess themselves. So next slide, please. This is the Antlers apartment building located in Lorraine. This was a window replacement project. And again, this is an apartment building. So we felt that this was really a good example to include today. Go to the next slide, please, Allison. So this is a former 82-room hotel. It's been converted to a 40-unit apartment building. The first floor does have a ballroom and 3 commercial spaces. It was $153,500 for the financing for that, 10-year term, 3%. What's really nice in terms of how this benefits not only the building owner, but the residents is those residents pay their utility bills. And so that savings accrues directly to the residents that are living there. And again, an important community benefit, not just for the commercial property owner, but the people that live in that apartment building. So the next slide, please. No picture here, they were all copyrighted. So this is a new construction project. This is the Vineyard Hotel Group. It operates as a Hampton Inn. This was a Lake County project. This was a $1 million financing. Again, the new construction was $10.5 million with market value. and we provided $1 million. This was built in 2019. It's a little over 53,000 square feet, and it has 82 rooms and some conference rooms and et cetera, commercial spaces. The improvements that were financed were the interior and exterior lighting, the floor, the roof, and the windows. They all demonstrated improved efficiency over what the building code is, so they were able to finance all of those improvements through the PACE program, help bring down their overall construction costs, and again, substantial savings, over $22,000 annually for those improvements that they incorporated into the building. So next slide, please. This was the picture that was up earlier of the Kanye Human Resources Council. This is a social service agency. This is a not-for-profit. It's a 20,000 square foot building built in '57. It offers multiple programs. They serve children, adults, and seniors. And again, it was one of our smaller financings. We had one that was smaller, but this was $115,000 for their roof, 3.5%, 15-year term. And again, the savings associated with replacing that roof, just a little over $1,900 a year. But again, for a social service agency, those are some significant savings that they can use toward other programming then. And then the next slide, which is the final project I want to talk about today, is Red Brick Development. This is operating now as the shipyards in Lorain, if anybody is familiar with Lorain or this property. Again, another $1 million financing, 3.5% for a 15-year term. This was basically a vacant building when the developer bought it. It was truly a shipbuilding facility. The only active use at that point was serving as a shower and restroom facility for the marina traffic. So the developer bought it, and this is a gut rehab project. They converted it to a multi-use facility. It now has an event center on the second floor. On the first floor, there's a restaurant, a brewery, a coffee shop. There's some retail space and a couple small offices. They were able to finance through our PACE program, interior and exterior lighting, the roof, the windows, heating, cooling system, and that includes a heated concrete floor. So there was tubing run throughout that concrete floor. And the only project to date that includes that type of improvement. But it's a great example of a gut rehab project. And again, using code basically because they took all the existing systems out and starting over, it's over $32,000 average annual savings for that building owner now that he's developed and opened that project. And this one, excuse me, this was one of the projects where the market value on the county auditor's website was very low, very low. We would never have been able to make the $1 million financing available had they not gotten an as approved or as improved appraisal, which set the market value for that property at nearly $4 million based on all the improvements that were made. So we work with the borrowers to try and address all of the things that are going to come up throughout the process to be able to get them as much of the financing as they can possibly qualify for. And then I want to give, let's go to the next slide, please. This is a handout that we offer, and I know it's very small, so don't try to read it. If anybody wants this handout, just please contact me. It does mention both the PACE program, and we have a STEP program, which is a loan program for smaller projects that need $5,000 up to $100,000. And just before I wrap today, I would say, again, going back to some of the information that was offered a little earlier, contact us sooner rather than later. My don't do this example is an applicant that we had that submitted everything for their application. We reviewed it. We offered them a term sheet for the financing that they requested. Everything checked out. We sent them the term sheet to sign. 30 days went by or so, and I hadn't heard from them. So I reached out and said, do you have any questions about the term sheet? It still didn't hear from them. And then it was, I believe, about like another month or so, maybe a little longer. I heard from the project manager saying, oh, we need to close this very quickly now. So But we came to discover that they had paid for a good portion of those improvements with cash, and it no longer qualified, or that portion of it no longer qualified, and they chose to withdraw their application. So good advice from Chris and Chris about making sure that you get in touch early and go through the steps that you need to preserve that cost eligibility. And with that, that's the wrap of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has. Well, I guess going back to that earlier question, Nicole, that you raised, yes, we do feel that $100,000 is the minimum amount of financing where it is still cost effective for the borrower to borrow through the PACE, at least through our PACE program, and make that available to our commercial customers. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Norma. And we don't have any questions at this time, but for anybody that does have a question, don't hold your questions till the end. We'll take them throughout. And next up is Dwayne Dickey with Air Force One, who's going to share how Air Force One is incorporating PACE financing into their overall approach for HVAC. Dwayne?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for attending. I always hate to be the person standing between you and your food, so I will make this as brief as possible. Air Force One is a mechanical service provider. Our headquarters is in Columbus. We have 6 locations throughout Ohio to service our customers throughout Ohio. We have about 200 employees, and about half of those are technicians. And we're happy to partner with GCP. We do have quite a few clients in Northeast Ohio, have not done a PACE project in that part of the state yet, but we've got some traction there. And I agree with the previous presenters. There is still a lot of traction and a lot of runway with PACE in Ohio, even though we've done over 400 million. Next slide, please. Why use PACE for HVAC upgrades? And this really is a summary of what everyone has already spoken of before me. It gives owners the ability to upgrade systems with little to no capital investment. It is off balance sheet financing, so the owner does not take on debt. The debt stays with the building. The payments are fixed, and there's no personal guarantee by the owner either. Definitely reduces long-term energy and operating costs. From an HVAC perspective, things we look at is how much money the owner's been spending on repairing HVAC systems, and we found in our projects that the HVAC portion is a very large portion of PACE projects typically. There are still some rebates around Ohio, and there are significant tax incentives in Ohio that we have not found anywhere else in the country. I guess it could be, but we've yet to uncover that. I'll cover that in a minute in a spreadsheet. It really solidifies the client-vendor relationship instead of us just being another contractor. We felt that this positions us as a partner because there are so many moving parts to PACE projects. Also reduces carbon footprint and increases property value. Next slide, please. Target markets, really, we found that office buildings are really the sweet spot for PACE, mainly because of triple net leases, where the tenant pays the property tax, but they also pay utility and CAM costs, which is repairs. So the goal with office building owners then is to find enough savings to offset the increase in property tax. So the tenant doesn't see a change in their total cost, but the building's got all new equipment. The owner didn't take on any debt. They've improved comfort, improved air quality, reduced downtime to the tenant, so they're not complaining if they're hot or cold and the system's down. But as far as the sweet spot, the target market for us, office buildings greater than 50,000 square feet, although we did a 40,000 square foot office building that just had really old, large equipment, and it penciled out pretty nicely. So 50,000 is just a ballpark. It really kind of depends on the system as well and how old everything is. But what we've also found is the owner needs to see the need and has some pain. We've had a couple that were, in our opinion, very attractive financially, and they just didn't see the need to replace 30-year-old rooftops yet because they felt like they still worked. So that's one thing we found as well. Next slide, please. So I know this is tough to see in the, I don't know if you have a box in front of you with questions. There is also a section called handouts. This is a handout in there. If you click on that, you can download it and look at this on your own as well. But to me, this is really the page that makes PACE sing. This is actually a project we did in Columbus. It was rooftop units, controls, lighting, and solar. It was about a $900,000 project. The efficiency savings was $88,000 with some repairs. This owner actually had a garden hose draped over his cooling tower, trying to keep it running in the summer. We finally convinced him it was time to replace it. As I mentioned in the previous slide, sometimes that's tough to do, to convince them that they really need to do that. At the point in time that we did this project, the rates were just under 6%. They have come down. They're closer to 5% now for 20-year fixed. I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, but the term of these loans is determined by the average life of the equipment being installed. So if you have a roof which has a 30-year life or 25-year life, depending on the roof, it will help extend the life of the whole project. And in Ohio especially, you want the term to be as long as possible if you do a comprehensive larger PACE project, because of this third column, well, fourth column from the left, called OAQDA tax abatement. We've only found that in Ohio, and on this project it was $19,000 a year, which over the life of it was almost $400,000 as a tax abatement, which shows up on the tax bill. So if you look to the left, the red numbers in parentheses is how much the tax bill went up for this client per year because of this PACE project. So there'll be a line item that says PACE assessment. On their tax bill, it'd be half of that twice a year. But his savings was $88,000, so he's already $9,000 positive cash flow plus this tax abatement. So this was a $28,000 a year positive cash flow project to the owner. Again, not the owner's loan. The loan stays on the building. So if he sells the building, the loan goes with the building. But the client or the tenants reaped the benefits of the reduced utility and operating costs, but the tax bill also went up. But to the tenant, it didn't change because there were enough savings and tax abatements to offset that. So this truly was no out-of-pocket. All hard and soft costs were financed. The owner did spend a little bit of money up front, but he got that back at the closing of the loan. At that point in time, there was a rebate, $25,000 rebate. When we presented this, that was at risk, but he did end up getting it. The interest on the loan is tax deductible. This showed straight line depreciation, but now with the bonus depreciation, he can depreciate all of that equipment immediately, which is a big number on some projects. And then the tax credits on this was about $108,000. And that is whether it's a federal or a solar investment tax credit, those tax credits can be significant. But again, these three columns to the right are benefits to the owner, even though the loan is not his. So to the owner, he's getting new equipment, no out of pocket, and then getting some pretty significant tax benefits as well. So the savings divestment ratio on this one was 1.7. Typically anything over 1.0 is a good investment. This was a very good investment. The client's very happy, had a lot of comfort issues in the building. So this was one of the projects a little under $1 million. Next slide, please. My contact information there. Again, we're excited to work with Greater Cleveland Partnership and look forward to doing some projects in Northeast Ohio like we have done in Central Ohio. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. That was a great overview and project illustration to walk us through the numbers that hopefully everyone can get a better sense as to how they actually pencil out.
Yep.
So with that, you've heard today how to finance these energy efficiency improvements and renewable energy projects with PACE, whether it's a new project or even in a retroactive refinancing status. You've seen a lot of great examples, several of which started with an energy audit that was performed by the GCP team. So if you're considering a project, know that we're here to help you do that energy audit as the first step and coordinate any contractor and the right PACE lender, whether that's NOPAC or for larger projects with our middle market size companies, for instance, with any of our private PACE lenders. We've assisted hundreds of businesses with audits, projects, and funding to ensure the greatest success of their project. And I'd like to thank our speakers today. This has been a wonderful presentation. And with that, since we have no questions, we can adjourn, and I wish you all well and that you all stay safe. Thanks and have a great day.